Come on, Livingston. We gotta go on and on and on. Together we can make it. We gotta go on and on and on. Come on, Livingston.
Knocks it through. Mullen bursting into the box. Josh Mullen.
Together we can make it.
Mullen's ball across, it's turned in! It's Pittman who's got it! Livingston leads!
Can they get the ball back in? O'Brien. Lead! And Livingston have the lead! Man, can score.
If we march together.
The full-time whistle blows and David Hayes celebrates. And the Livingston fans join in exultation.
Come on, Livingston.
Livingston have the lead against Rangers, and they are certainly rising to a few occasions on their return to the top flight in Scotland.
Come on, Livingston. We gotta go.
Hello and welcome back to Talk Livi, the podcast dedicated to everything Livingston Football Club and Scottish football. My name is Angus and today I'm joined by Euan. Euan, good weekend, mate?
It was a good weekend, yes. For those who didn't know, I had surgery on Tuesday last week for a hernia operation, so I've been a bit useless for the last 7 days almost, but
Only
managed
the
to
last
get,
7 days.
I've been useless for most of my life, Angus, let's be honest. But yeah, I managed to make the Hibs game, and I'm not going to lie, Angus, I was probably hoping for a bland 0-0 draw with my condition, because it's not the easiest to shout and get involved in the atmosphere when you've got 3 holes in your stomach. But yeah, ended up watching one of the most entertaining games we've seen at Livi in a while. So it was a great way to kind of cap off the weekend as well. And obviously delighted to get another 3 points on the board. What about yourself, mate?
Yeah, very much the same. Obviously Saturday for us, the GS boys were in action. We were playing the Hibs supporters team, and I think we got the ball rolling essentially with a 3-0 victory over them on the sandy, dusty park on the A89 on Broxburn. Absolutely boiling. I think we needed about 4 water breaks, but absolutely tremendous, and got the day kicked off in the best way possible. But it's always delightful to get one over on our kind of local rivals, isn't it? But as always, you can find this episode as well as all of our others on your preferred podcast streaming sites. Just search for Talk Livi, so follow us or subscribe to ensure you don't miss another episode.
We'll kick things off by discussing that game against Hibs. No, not the GS one, sadly. Livingston's first team, obviously, against Hibs, as we recorded another victory and made it back-to-back wins in the Premiership.
Euan caught up with Andy Ross from the MFC Podcast to preview our trip to Fir Park to take on Motherwell.
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 Oh.
That's your West Side Story over here. West Lothian side story.
The Lions made it back-to-back Premiership wins as they chose to leave it late to pick up all 3 points against Hibs. Angus, first of all, what a cracking game of football, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think, often we get tarnished with the brush of, negative football and stuff like that. Unfairly so, I would say, as well. So, it's refreshing, coming out of a weekend and, there's plaudits for, an exciting game of football taking place. I'm pretty sure I've seen on Twitter, one of the BBC sports scene guys, or one of the people behind the scene, was saying, one of the reporters was basically saying it's one of the games that he's enjoyed the most in, the last couple of years. So, and I kind of taking the result out of perspective, that's kind of good to see a wee bit of credit going to the team for once, because, as we've been saying there, like, we're often tarnished with that brush of, being a big physical side and stuff like that. And I think we are deserving of a lot more credit than that. Sure, we can play to certain abilities at some point, which obviously we'll end up talking about, moments that have changed the game. But, it's a great cracking bunch of footballers in that team. And yeah, it's good to see that, we've rightfully got plaudits this time round. But yeah, I think, we always usually talk about this when we talk about Hibs, and it's like, if you get at them, we always kind of feel that, we can get something off them. And I mean, that first half perfectly, encapsulates that. Hibs were nothing short of dreadful in that first half, I would say. The boy Melkerson he came off, quite early in the first half, and then at full time it appeared to be coming out on crutches. So I don't know if before the game he already wasn't fit. So they're basically playing with 10 men. The boy Tavares was absolutely awful. He got hooked at half time. So in a way, it kind of seemed as if Hibs were playing with 9 men. It also seemed as if we were playing with about 13 to 14 with the way that like Jason Holt and Omiyonga, Pittman, everybody was working tremendously hard, giving no minutes peace. We've had another great start to the game. 2 home games in a row we've scored in the 5th or 6th minute. Jason Holt, we just mentioned there, robs the ball off of Kenna in the middle of the park, makes his way to Nubly, and the goal, I'm pretty good line with it. It doesn't ever seem as if Nubly's kind of like not like full pace or anything. He just sort of sidesteps away from handling, and boom, he's through on goal. And great finish to put it off the post. After I heard it clip the post, I was like, oh no, is it going wider that? But thankfully rolled into the net. But yeah, I think that goal, perfectly encapsulates, the kind of side that we are at this moment, that kind of hard work, and then also that added wee bit of quality as well. Fairly reminiscent, I guess you would maybe say, of that Dundee United goal from Scott Pittman. Maybe not so much of the pressing, continuously from Holt as what Byrne did, but, a similar factor where, he's a kind of ball that he probably shouldn't be winning, knocks it through, and yeah, a player with great quality, goes and tips it off. But yeah, Joel Newbley, Euan, what an absolute legend, isn't he?
He must be a defender's worst nightmare because you don't know how to play him. If you try and wrestle with him and go with the physical battle, he's just going to spin you and roll you. If you try and give him yards, he's just going to run at you and build up speed. And we've seen what his close control's like, and the goal's a perfect example when you're giving him an opportunity to run at you. He's very skillful. He must be an absolute nightmare to try and mark. And purchase and handling, I was confident, certainly going into the game. I always feel relatively confident when we're going to play Hibs. As you mentioned there, if you get the dirty side of the game right, and certainly the first half, we definitely got that right. We were in their faces. Yeah, they passed the ball side to side, but they didn't create anything other than, I think, Christian Deutsch had a header which was easily saved by Shamal George. But we were in their faces constantly. You mentioned the 2 wide players in Melkerson and Tavares. I think Nicky Devlin and Montano did an absolute job on them. As soon as they got on the ball, they were on their first touch straight away. They weren't allowing them to get them turned. Every time they picked up the ball in the wide areas and not allowed to get turned. And I think we did an absolute job on Hibs in the first half. And it's what we talk about. You do the ugly side of the game and you'll get your opportunities against them. And at the back, that centre-half pairing and Hanlon and Porteous, there's opportunities in there with them. And don't get me wrong, Joel's taking the goal brilliant. Great play by Holt in the middle of the park with the press on Kenna. Newbley's obviously got... And as you say, Michael Stewart talked about it on Sports Scene. It's almost like slow motion, but it is full speed. Like he seems quite meandering into the box, and the tackle from Hanlon's pathetic. Going with the wrong foot, and to take nothing away from Joel, it's a fantastic finish. And I know it's something we've discussed on the podcast, that it's probably something he'll need to add to his game. And so far, so good this season. It's 2 goals in 3 games in the Premiership, and 2 cracking goals from his perspective, certainly. But we had other opportunities in the first half. I think Pittman had a header at the back post, which he's tried to put back across. Didn't quite get a connection on it. Had a couple of efforts blocked, and then Newbley's almost had a carbon copy, except on his left foot. He's almost squirmed it underneath Marshall. David Marshall's managed to pull off the save in the end. And at half-time, for me, there was only one team that ever looked like winning that game of football, and it was us. What I would say is credit to Hibs, because for the first 20 minutes of the second half, we were absolutely camped in, but it was very un-Hibs-like. I thought they were launching balls into our box and just penning us in that way. Whilst Hibs, as I mentioned, first half, it's more Hibs are like to dominate possession, play side to side, try and work an opening. And they were launching balls into our box. I think David described it on the radio as having 320 corners to defend in the opening 15, 20 minutes. But I think we almost managed to ride that out, and then obviously conceded the goal. The goal is actually incredibly lucky when you look back at it. from my end of the ground, you don't get quite as good a view of what's happening in that 18-yard box. But certainly looking at the replay, I mean, I think it's Pittman's tried to clear it over his head. It's bounced off somebody's head when he's tried to clear it and worked its way to the back post for Kennett to knock in. So it's fortunate, I think, that goal in many ways. I think Shamal George has pulled off a save in the build-up, and then obviously, as I say, Pittman's clearance has just ricocheted off a Hibs player and worked its way. I can't believe that boy's going to get an assist for that on fantasy football. But Hibs had a few other opportunities. I think Martin Boyle hit the post. Cadden had an effort which was deflected into Shamal George. And there was also a penalty claim from Martin Boyle, which almost kicked off a boxing match in the technical areas between Davy Martindale and Lee Johnson. Having seen it back, it's never a penalty, is it?
It's not just not a penalty, it's a second booking and a red card, in all honesty. Like, if we're going to be playing about that, it's a blatant dive, and Martin Boyle's done it yet again. I don't want to hear it about, oh, he's trying to protect himself. There's no challenge there to essentially get him to go down like that. It's embarrassing, and it's not the first time that he's done it against us, and it's not going to be the last that he does it in the league this season. So it'll be interesting to see how he gets on when VAR comes up here. Maybe he'll duly get punished for it like he probably should do, but you don't want to be seeing that. And you know, a couple of Hibs fans in that scene, like in the on the stairs on the way back up to the kind of like the town centre bit after the game, saying, "Oh, it was an absolute stonewall penalty, absolute disgrace," and stuff like that. I think they'll be a wee bit embarrassed looking back on it if that's what they're going to be thinking. And yeah, Martin Boyle's back. Did we expect anything less, you know, from him doing that? To be honest, though, thankfully, you know, it wouldn't be given this time. I always remember that one. I think it was given against Bartley a couple of seasons ago. I think it was it the campaign that got ended by COVID? I think he came on the bench. I think he won a penalty by, you know, diving. So, he likes to try that against us for some reason. But thankfully, this time it wasn't given. But credit does have to go to Hibs. And, you know, to be fair, I'll give Boyle a wee bit of credit, you know, for, you know, making an impact when he came off the bench. He did have a bit more about him than, you know, the players who'd been playing before. Not that was too hard, to be honest, when you could have picked anybody in the stadium and they would have made a bigger impact than, you know, Melkerson or Tavares did. But yeah, Hibs, to be fair to them, did come into it massively. I would say, though, to be fair to our guys, like Obalai and Fitzwater at the back, they kept it very tight. To have, you know, that many corners and that against us, you know, obviously we did concede a goal through one of them, but for the most part, you know, we're quite comfortable. You know, a lot of corners became because we were winning every ball and, you know, deflecting it back out. So I think, you know, that's kind of going a wee bit maybe underappreciated. Yeah, people were saying we're camped in there, but at the same time, I think there's great showcases of, you know, defending in that instance. I think Fitzwater again is having an absolutely tremendous season, putting his body in front of everything, and Io as well. I think there was maybe a wee bit of question mark with the kind of the Betfred Cup games and stuff like that, where, you know, it was Fitzwater and Kinkar or Fitzwater and somebody else at centre half to see like if Io would come back in. But yeah, he started the season tremendously well and, you know, fully cemented himself back in the team. And then obviously the big man gets the winner as well. I think you'll be very delighted to see your new favourite player, Sean Kelly, get an assist.
Absolute wand of a left foot that man has. There's something about left footers, Angus. They always seem to just have a little bit more culture about them.
I mean, as a left footer, Euan, I could not agree anymore.
I'm talking absolute shite. I disagree with my previous statement. That's no, but as you say, Big Io managed to rock up with a winner. But come on, we need to get on to the technical areas. Davy Martindale's definitely taken Lee Johnson in 4 rounds in a boxing ring, isn't he?
4 rounds?
I'm being generous. I think Lee Johnson would be a scrappy little bastard. But Davy's definitely taken him in 4 rounds, at least 4 rounds, surely.
There's no chance of Lee Johnson. You know, he had his nice wee buttoned up shirt. You know, had like the V-neck out. I think any buttons lower down, you know, he would have been just flaunting a whole bunch of chest there. To be fair, getting as much of a tan as possible. But it seemed to be quite strange because I think everybody, well, from my perspective, I was just looking at, you know, all the players on the pitch, kind of, you know, arguing and pleading that. I didn't realise that, you know, they two had came together at all. Did they actually like go like face to face, or were they?
Davy was being held back by the 4th official just about. And I tell you what, Lee Johnson's lucky because Davy Martindale could take any manager in the league. I've absolutely no doubt about that. Davy Martindale could take any of them. But just a comment on the Hibs technical area in general. I have never seen such an animated bench is Hibs management duo in Lee Johnson and Jamie McAllister. Obviously, Jamie McAllister will always have a soft spot in Livingston fans' hearts. But Jamie, chill the fuck out on the touchline, pal. Because tell you what, those two are going to end up with a few touchline bans as the season goes on, I reckon, because they are so animated. They were in the fourth official's ear constantly for the 90 minutes. It was even throw-ins and everything like that, like minimal decisions in the game. They were going absolutely bonkers. They made Davey look really chilled. Like, and we know what Davey's like. Davey can get quite animated at the best of times. So, yeah, you mentioned obviously getting the winner, and we managed to get through that kind of spell of dominance from Hibs for that opening 20 minutes. And I think we started working our way back into the game, and I think we created good chances though as well. You know, Anderson had that chance when Nubly's worked his way out of the corner past 3 or 4 Hibs players that seemed to roll in Anderson. He also had a chance himself, which he's put over the bar when he got turned inside the box. But the goal, it's textbook header from Ayo, isn't it? Head it down into the ground. It's a fantastic delivery by Sean Kelly, to be fair. Hibs defending wise, pathetic again. I think it's Christian Doidge is picking up Ayo Obalai. Surely you'd put one of your centre halves on one of the biggest players in the park, you know, going to defend a set play in that area. You know where the ball's going to go. You know, you look at our team, you're hitting 3 targets, aren't you? You're hitting Fitzwater, Obalai, or Kelly's taking the set play.
You're trying to say that not every Livy player is 6'5" and, you know, just an absolute physical beast and that?
Apparently, we're not all mutant monsters in the Livy team. But yeah, as I say, you've probably got 3 targets there. You've got Nubly, Fitzwater, and Obalai. Now, surely you're going to put your best headers of a ball on those 3 players, aren't you, at a set play? And I can't believe they put Christian Doidge a centre forward to mark one of them. But thank God they did, because I always went in and pulled off the winner, and it was great scenes, albeit I was restricted in terms of how excited I could get about the goal. I looked like one of those inflatable things with the arms just waving about as good as I could get on Saturday. But that's another comment about the game. I thought the atmosphere was absolutely cracking. It's one of the best home atmospheres I've felt in a little while as well. I don't know if it's the sunshine, if just how the game panned out in general kind of added to that. But we did get away with a couple of late scares after we got that goal. Shamal George has pulled off what I think is an unbelievable save from the boy Euan from the edge of the box. It's came past maybe 2 or 3 bodies. It's moved a lot in the air, and he's managed to turn it over the bar. And I can't remember one of the new Hibs forwards. He had a chance where he's put it over the bar. I think Fitzwater's probably just done enough to put him off. But yeah, it was a cracking game of football. Cracking way to win it. Great atmosphere at the game. I came away from it with just such a buzz. I've missed this over the summer months. I've missed this for that very short spell away, a Saturday afternoon at Livy, sunshine, and getting 3 points against Hibs. It's becoming routine against Hibs now, isn't it?
Last 4 games we've played, 4 wins, 4 different managers as well, I believe. Is that true?
Yeah, 4 different managers. And I was looking at social media after the game, and Hibs fans constantly were referring to the pitch. So I went and done my homework, Angus, and since we've won promotion and put the plastic pitch in, Hibs have only beaten us twice at Easter Road. They've also beaten us twice on our plastic pitch. So despite all their complaints about the plastic pitch, they've got almost as good a record in terms of victory. In fact, they have as good a record of victories at our place as they do at Easter Road. So to put it bluntly, it just turns out Hibs aren't very good at playing against us. And it backs up our theory every time we go to play Hibs that we are Hibs' worst nightmare in terms of how we play. And it's all adding up.
Yeah, can't agree anymore. The plastic pitch again, you know, they've only beaten us, you know, twice since then, Easter Road as well. You know, next one you'll be saying, you know, Celtic beat Kilmarnock 5-0 on a plastic pitch as well. That'll really be showing the end of the world, won't it, as well? It's as if it, you know, if you've actually got the better quality, that'll shine through at the end of the day. But nah, let's not make too much sense of it. But yeah, I would like to touch on like the atmosphere as well. I sit like kind of closer towards where, you know, the people are in C3, so it is kind of usually lively where I am anyway. But like you could hear from all sides of their stand there that the team, the support was really getting behind the team, especially during those moments where we were pinned back in and Hibs were coming back in. I felt that the team, like the support, did a great job of kind of sticking up for our kind of side as well. Like it seems silly to like say that in a way, but like I think it really did kind of make a difference. And then that 20 minutes period kind of faded there, and then we came back into it and kind of like roared the team back on to get in the elusive winner. But yeah, like absolutely tremendous, and hopefully a lot more people will be taking it in more often in that now. Quite a big game against Hibs. Hopefully we can get a similar following. I think we've got quite a wee while until our next home league game, because it's Motherwell and then Aberdeen away. But hopefully we can get some other people. Surely the weather's not probably going to be quite as nice, but I think that factor did make a difference, to be fair. And as you said, such a good feel-good factor. The team's playing well. Team's such a likeable bunch of guys as well. You look at that squad and you want to root for them so much. And yeah, it's good. It's very good to be a Livingston fan right now, isn't it?
Yeah, cracking start to the season. If you'd offered me 6 points from our first 3 games this season, taking into account you were playing Rangers, obviously, Dundee United, who finished 4th in the league,
away from
playing Hibs, who you expect to be a bit resurgent with a new manager. Then you've got Motherwell and Aberdeen. Motherwell, a bit of a bogey team for us, finished 5th, qualified for Europe. Aberdeen spent a lot of money this summer. Again, you expect them to be resurgent. So you're probably looking at these 2 games, the Dundee United game and the Hibs game, going, you really need to pick up points because you don't want to be kind of getting marooned a little bit after a few games. And we've certainly done that, and we've, in my opinion, thoroughly deserved the 6 points that we've got so far. We were excellent up at Tannadice. I thought, take away that 20-minute spell where Hibs were definitely on top in the game. I think we probably deserved the 3 points at the weekend there. But even that 20-minute spell, I loved that. I loved our grittiness to kind of get through that spell and still be in the game, because we could have capitulated after conceding that goal. As I say, there were so many balls getting thrown into our box. It would have been easy for us to crumble, and we didn't do that. And it shows the team's got a bit of a backbone about it, and that was really good to see. But it's been a generally very good week supporting Livy, because on Tuesday night, to give the guys a little bit of credit, our B team, who I think had only had maybe 3 or 4 training sessions together, kind of 16, 17, 18-year-olds, managed to go to League 2 leaders Bonnyrigg and win on penalties. What a cracking result that was as well.
Yeah, that's unbelievable to see. The guys have done a great job at setting up like the youth academy. It doesn't seem too long ago that they were asking basically for applicants to now have a team there. And what effectively will be one of the first games that they've ever played. I can't imagine they'll have played. Well, it is the first competitive game our newly formed reserve team would have ever played. So it's an absolute incredible scalping that they've taken there. Obviously, we had Ivan in goals, made a big difference. Saving a penalty in the 90 minutes and then saving 3 in the shootout as well. Bit Sindhu as well, filling in at centre half as well. What a great run out for those guys as well. And fair play to the young players. I think there's a couple of people in the GS chat that went to it. I think they said the young boy Rocco looks quite good. He's got a double barrel second name that I'm not entirely sure. I think it's Hickey something quite fancy. For his name alone, I want him to make it to the first team, but apparently looks a bit of a prospect. And yeah, spoke very well in the post-match interview as well. But yeah, it's just kind of encouraging to see that as well, that we've been known in the past for bringing through some youth players, whether it be players who have been released from other clubs, the likes of your Snodgrasses, your Griffiths, and that, giving them that second chance to go up. And yeah, hopefully there's going to be a couple of local lads as well, making their way through, and we can see some players, even making short cameos at the end of the season or something like that. It would be very great to see. But yeah, tremendous to see, and hopefully I think next game is going to be a tough one. Celtic B, that'll be tough, but another great experience for them, right?
Yeah, exactly. Celtic B will be a very tough game. Granted, Celtic's B team play in the Lowland League, so they're playing kind of against men's teams every week, so they're almost getting a bit seasoned prior to going in and stepping into first team football. But to give credit to our B team, credit to Neil Hastings, who took the team on the night. Fantastic. Great result. Unbelievable result. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it along, but certainly, as you mentioned, a few of my pals have managed to go along and said first half they were very competitive in the game, and 0-0 was probably a fair reflection. again, second half, they've probably been under the cosh for the vast majority of it. And Ivan's had to pull off a few wonder saves within that. But it's fantastic to see that they managed to get over the line and show that bottle in a penalty shootout as well to get through. And a lot of credit has to go, as I say, to the guys behind the scenes involved with the academy. As I say, a big shout out to Neil Hastings, who's heavily involved in terms of the academy as well. But most credit goes to the lads for showing the bottle to take on what's a very good side in Bonnyrigg. Just won the Lowland League, won promotion, and are flying in League Two. So yeah, cracking result for them. But it was also a return to action for our women's team this weekend, Angus. They were up at Dundee, taking on Drybrough Athletic, I think it is. Managed to get off the mark with a clean sheet and a point. Yeah,
and hearing about the game, I think it could have went either way, to be fair. I think 0-0. I've seen that the Drybrough goalkeeper was given man of the match from their kind of like social feed and that. Speaking to Jess briefly about it, she said, Jess Murphy, centre half, said that it was kind of like an even game that either team kind of could have nicked. Unfortunately, weren't able to make the match, but it's not a terrible result. First game of the season away from home, 0-0. I think it's going to be very interesting this season. I don't think it will be the last maybe tight game that we're going to see like this, maybe a scoreless draw, because the league is made up of all these teams who are going to be of a similar ilk. I think we looked at it last season where you're probably saying the kind of like top 7-8 teams would probably give each other a very good game, and then probably from there downwards you'd probably expect quite like a big deficit to be on the cards for most of them. So I think from that perspective, I think that the women's games this season are going to be very entertaining through that aspect, where it's going to be very competitive matches every single weekend. And we've also made a couple of new acquisitions to help boost the squad. Nick Sherrick, Amy Hay, Erin Burns as well. So hopefully getting to see them playing pretty soon as well. I think two of them started the game. I think Erin was on the bench. So it'll be interesting to see, how these new faces are gelling into the team as well. But yeah, I think they probably won't be too disappointed. First game of the season. There was also a couple of key players missing. Jen Dodds wasn't there. Rachel Walkinshaw is still having an injury. I think newly appointed captain Natasha Frew as well wasn't available. Shannon Mulligan is a new vice captain as well, so she was leading the team out. But yeah, I think there's a lot to be optimistic about this season, and hopefully things will continue as they did last season. It's kind of hard to forget as well that this is only the second season that the club has had a women's team before. So yeah, there's a lot to be optimistic for, and hopefully next week, the game against Renfrew down at the stadium, that a lot of people will be hoping to take it in, and hopefully it's a cracking day, because it's a great time being there. I mean, you've taken in a lot of games. The women's matches are very enjoyable. There isn't as much of like the stupid shenanigans as in the men's games, if that only encourage some people to go. But yeah, there's great quality, and the team's like a bunch of great last season that as well. So yeah, come on down and support the Lionesses on.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Angus. If you are at a loose end on a Sunday, certainly get down and support the girls. As Angus has mentioned, there's been a bit of a restructure with the women's game in terms of the league setup. So the games this year, that I reckon you're right, they'll be very, very competitive. There's going to be quite a few close games, but made a few acquisitions. I know Nick Sturrock very well. I used to work with her at Spartans, used to be my boss, so might need to look into sponsoring Nick for the new season, Angus. But no, I have to say, guys, get involved, get down to the stadium, get supporting the girls, because hopefully they can have a successful campaign and push for promotion like they did last year. I'm delighted to welcome Andy Ross from the MFC Podcast back on to Talk Livi. Andy, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, very good, Euan. Thanks very much for having us back on. Looking forward to this.
Thank you for coming back on. Now, we were just talking about this before starting to record. It seems every time I get one of the fans back on the podcast, a lot seems to have happened at their football club. But last time we had you on was just before Ricky Lammy's late stoppage time equaliser at the Spaghetti Head, which stole our rightful top six place. How different would Motherwell's summer have been had that goal not gone in?
Oh, that's a difficult one, because it's been a pretty drastic last 5 or 6 months since we last spoke. I think that if Livingston had won that game 2-1, then Graham Alexander would have been sacked 5 months ago, to be honest with you. The downward curve was really, really drastic at that point, and I did allude to that the last time I was on. We had only won one game since Boxing Day at that point. We beat St Mirren 4-2 at Fir Park, and they were very, very poor that day. Apart from that, there wasn't any positivity coming out of the club. The style of football, the results, everything was going wrong. It's amazing how your fortunes can turn, though. We did make the top six. We got enough points in the bag in these last 5 games to make Europe. Europe didn't quite go to plan. The inevitable sacking then did come. And yeah, we're maybe a wee bit back to square one in terms of we're now looking forward to a couple of weeks where we expect a fair bit of recruitment and overhaul in the squad. But at the same time, there is that positivity. We've got a club legend in charge now. There's been a wee bit of divisiveness in terms of the reaction to Stevie Hammell's appointment. Many are very happy with it. Some think that it's maybe a cheap appointment and a risky appointment given his inexperience in terms of being a manager. But we've won 2 out of 3 in the Premiership so far, so I'm sitting here pretty happy as it stands.
Yeah, as you say, that late equaliser did mean you would finish 5th and have European football to look forward to. Overall, how do you look back at last season? The best way to probably describe it from your perspective is probably a season of 2 halves, isn't it? Because probably at the halfway point you were looking going, that's not too bad. And then second half of the season, albeit you got that kind of turn in results at the death, didn't you?
Yeah, we owe a lot to the first half of last season, because had it not been for that, then we would have been relegated. There's no getting away from that. We were aided a lot by the fact that the likes of Hibs and Aberdeen were very, very poor last season, which allowed us to make the top 6 in the first place, because the points tally, albeit that tends to be round about, I think we got 38 or 39 points, but that points tally tends to get you top 6, but yeah, it wasn't good. I don't even think, I look back in the first half of the season and you look at the results, yeah, we got a lot of good results in that first half of the season, but the performances weren't there. It wasn't an enjoyable experience. And you think back to when you came on our podcast and they just announced the shutdown of Scottish football due to the Omicron, and we were taking it slightly badly, but I can remember the excitement of coming back to the football last summer. And it didn't take long for that enthusiasm to completely drain out of me. Alexander Ball, as it was called, just completely was poor to watch. I look back on it as a good season because we finished 5th place, and you can't really argue with your league placing at the end of 38 games.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really tell the full story of what was going on in the park, it must be said.
Yeah, it's certainly been an eventful start to the new campaign, as we've kind of alluded to. The European adventure would prove to be a short one, both travel-wise and in terms of the number of games, with defeat to Sligo. How big a disappointment were the performances, more than anything, regardless of even the results, just the performances that you put together for those games against Sligo?
They were awful. They were a disgrace, to be perfectly honest. The first leg, I was able to make a few excuses for it and a few allowances for it, because I thought we might just not have that sharpness there. And remember, Motherwell played Clonecley of Wales, I think around about 2010.
Yeah.
We lost the first leg when we were playing at Airdrie. Fir Park was undergoing renovation. We lost the first leg 1-0. We went over to Wales and won 3-0, and it was just an extra week sharpness in the legs.
Yeah.
But we prepared really poorly. We only played 2 pre-season friendlies, and one was against an Austrian 3rd or 4th tier side in a game that was almost kind of rotating players regularly, and it just wasn't really kind of anything close to proper football. We then played Partick Thistle, and then 4 days later played Sligo, and we didn't look anywhere near ready to be playing a team that they weren't professional, and they weren't a terrible side by any stretch of the imagination, but there's no getting away from the fact we should have beaten them. And it's a really costly one for the club in terms of finance. It was a really costly one in terms of goodwill until Graham Alexander was removed from his position, because Motherwell took over 1,000 supporters over for a game they only got 300 tickets for.
Yeah. No.
And you sort of kind of travel back thinking, why do we bother? It was embarrassing. We didn't even kind of come up short or just kind of have a hard luck story. We get battered over 2 legs by an Irish league side. I don't know where it would place them in terms of kind of trying to give people a bit of context as to where they would fit in the Scottish league system. I would say top end Championship, maybe lower Premiership. But you do look at it and we'll look back on it as a bit of an embarrassment, to be honest. And yeah, I don't think there was any coming back for Graham Alexander after that one.
Yeah, you had a few issues yourself getting to Sligo, didn't you? With your passport, I believe.
A lack of passport, yeah. I wish I'd spoken to you before booking up, it must be said. But yeah, don't get me wrong, it was a great trip. They always are. The football can quite often be the worst part of these trips, whether it be an away day or a European trip. But we had our hopes on getting a bit deeper into the competition. The next round would have thrown up Viking of Norway or Sparta Prague, and there was quite a lot of people contemplating booking Prague. They ended up very grateful they didn't, because the Norwegians won and we get beat. So.
Well, if it's any consolation, my pal had the exact same experience you did with his passport going to Ireland, and we went across to the Scotland game. And as you say, absolutely spot on. The football was the worst bit about the trip. Other than that, Ireland was absolutely brilliant. People are great. Pints were flowing. You know, everything about it, other than the 90 minutes on the football ground, was absolutely brilliant. But that's, as you say, it's you do it every week. You would still do it again, wouldn't you? But
oh no, absolutely. And the thing is, it's amazing how quickly you get over it. We're not supporters of massive teams that are used to winning every week, so you just dust yourself down, and as the Motherwell social media pages would often say, like, you just go again the next week. But that's exactly what happens.
It wasn't long after that, Graham Alexander, you parted company with him. Do you think Alexander almost got the European games as a courtesy because he got Motherwell 5th place? Do you think it was almost right, you got us there, so we'll give you these games, and then the level of performance, they've kind of gone, right, we really need to make a change now?
I'm not so sure about that. I think that you look at Alexander's record on paper, it stands up okay against previous Motherwell managers, and even they had the stat about in 2021, Motherwell were third best record in Scotland, or the top flight, even behind obviously Rangers and Celtic. So there was ways that Graham Alexander could sell that he was doing a very good job. The problem was that I think there was beginning to be a bit of disharmony behind the scenes as well. There's rumours of fallouts with players like Stephen O'Donnell, who's been either stripped to the captaincy. We've never really heard much about that, but Liam Kelly's the captain for this season. There's normally a bit of an announcement as to who the captain will be for the season, but that didn't happen this season. Kind of murmurings that O'Donnell wasn't willing to be captain under a manager that isn't playing him or doesn't value him. So we don't really know what was going on there, and it's one of these ones where the truth will never ever come out in that one, unless you were there. We don't know. So maybe cut this out because it's pointless speculating. No, I think the overall thing was, and it's quite strange because in the Thursday night after the Sligo game, you're a few beers down, you're thinking he has to go and can't stick this manager. And then the next day when he resigns and then he releases his statement through the PFA, you actually begin to feel a wee bit sorry for him, because it just felt like he was drowning almost, and he just couldn't deal with. He didn't know how to change it, and it would have been a never-ending story if we had continued. But at the same time, I think when a manager takes a team like Motherwell into Europe after keeping them up the season before, if you're an outsider looking in and Motherwell go and sack the manager, without that Sligo Rovers result, it would have seemed absolutely obscene. Yeah. I saw quite a lot of like Chris Sutton talking up about it, and a few others talking about how harsh the sacking was. But with all due respect to these guys, none of them have to go watch Motherwell every week, and Motherwell under Alexander, it was a real chore. Yeah,
I kind of used what you've said about Motherwell under Alexander when folk were asking me about it. What were your thoughts on it? And I said, well, from a Motherwell fan's perspective, certainly brand of football's not been particularly easy on the eye, and when you're not getting results, that plays a big part in it as well. So, you know, I mentioned what you've said to me in the past when talking about that, and as you say, you've got pundits chiming in on their opinion on it, and as you say, they don't watch Motherwell week in, week out.
It was really funny when we did the Scottish Football Forums season preview about a month or so ago, and myself and the United supporter were possibly two of the most negative voices on the podcast. And that's the team that finished fourth and the team that finished fifth. But that's how it goes. I don't think in any way as a fan base we're greedy. We don't expect masses of success. And even if the results aren't going well, again, I'm sort of person that looks for positives and things, and I'll kind of try and find, well, we played well, or such and such looks like a good prospect. There was none of that under Alexander in the back end of last season. And the celebrations, even at Livingston and then the subsequent ones at Ross County and after beating Hearts, I just couldn't get myself to feel quite as enthusiastic about it as others could.
Yeah.
It just didn't really feel like we had earned it. Although, as I've already said, obviously over a 38-game season, we got more points than 7 other teams in the league, so we did deserve it. But yeah, I think what transpired in Europe kind of backs up my theory a wee bit there, though.
Yeah. Now, despite that setback, you've won 2 of your opening 3 league games, as you mentioned, as well as confirming the appointment of Stevie Hamill permanently. What's the feeling like amongst fans with the appointment? You made, close to 600 appearances for the club over 2 spells. He's been involved with the youth setup, which is very important at Motherwell. He's a club legend, so surely most folk will be giving him that support and backing, won't they?
Yeah, I certainly hope so. The one thing that I would say about the appointment of Stevie Hamill is one that everyone can get behind. He's a guy that is ingrained in the football club. He's been there since 2002, with the exception of, I think it was a year and a half away at Southend United. So he's grown up at Motherwell. He knows the place inside out. He's also been the head of the academy, which is such an important thing for a club like Motherwell. We've been renowned over the years for bringing through young talents, developing them to a certain level, and then eventually they move on. That's kind of stagnated a wee bit in recent years, I think, and we have been more reliant on bringing players from down south and the lower leagues of down south. And it's very much a hit or a miss, but more often a miss. I think we'll see a bit more of a joined up thinking approach between the academy and the senior side now.
Yeah.
And I just think even the reaction he's got, albeit the St Johnstone game was a real disappointment, but he was quite bold in that game as well. He made changes at half time. He tried to get us back into the game. You could see what we were trying to do. And then the performance at Pittodrie on Saturday, that's one of the best Motherwell performances that's been in well over a year. Absolutely excellent. The amount of chances that we passed up, we could have won the game 5-2, 6-2, and Jim Goodwin wouldn't have really been able to complain too much about it. And then after it, it's just celebrations with the supporters and things like that. It just feels like there's much more of a bond between the team, the manager, and the supporters just now. So, yeah, I think that there's a bit of positivity creeping in for the first time in quite a few months, which is a nice feeling. We've now got to just build on it, though. It's so important that we don't lose that momentum. And we've got a game that, well, you'll maybe not agree. I think on paper it looks winnable for us on Saturday. We need to push on. If we could get 9 points from our first 4 games, then you're potentially 9 points above bottom spot. And as negative as that is, you've got to deal with avoiding relegation first and then start to look up. And our first 6 fixtures on paper, I thought, looked pretty decent. A good chance to get some points on the board. Under Alexander, I don't think we would have won the St Mirren game in the opening day of the season. We would have still lost to St Johnstone game in the second game, and then we would have got hammered because we would have been so negative and we would have stuck to the same principles that we used in the first 2 games, and Aberdeen would have seen right through it. So he's talking a brilliant game. He's got the backing of the supporters just due to his stature around the football club. Whether it's a cheap appointment I don't know. I don't know who the main contenders were. There was names like Paul Lambert being bandied about, Simo Valakari, who played for the club in the late 90s, early thousands. So we've got someone that knows the club inside out. He loves the football club clearly, and he's been ambitious enough to step aside from his role as head of academy and take that step beyond to try and make it a management. So yeah, I think the start he's had is definitely helping his cause. There's a lot of enthusiasm about the appointment now, and I do think that that's kind of just escalated over the course of the last couple of weeks.
With every sort of summer, there's changes in amongst squads, especially clubs like ourselves and Motherwell. It seems that there hasn't been a great deal of turnover in the squad this year at Motherwell, which is probably a first for a couple of seasons. The only kind of major arrivals I've seen are the likes of Blair Spittle and Paul McGinn coming in. Are there any other arrivals or any other business that Motherwell are planning on doing?
I certainly expect so, yeah. The tough thing for Stevie Hamill is going to be getting some of the guys out the door. We have we're bloated in areas and we're really lacking in other areas right now. But as I say, when you're shopping in the markets that we're shopping in, you're going to get these players that just don't set in a light, and then you've got the problem. Where do they go after that? It can be a bit of a hard sell trying to get these guys out the door, especially if you're paying them reasonably decent money as well. So I'm expecting, brought in a sub goalkeeper the other day because we had a absolutely bizarre cameo from Andy Dibble, the goalkeeping coach. Motherwell's goalkeeping coach left for Dundee United over the summer, Craig Hinchcliffe. We brought in Andy Dibble, who was former Man City and Rangers goalkeeper. Brought him in as goalkeeping coach. He was friendly with Alexander. He was in for maybe 2.5 months and at a push, and then he left in the middle of last week. So Scott Fox has moved over to be goalkeeping coach, and we brought in a guy that's been in trial for quite some time. So he's come in as, I don't know whether it would be Stevie Hamill's first signing. I think it was possibly Graham Alexander's last signing.
Yeah.
To be honest, Blair Spittle had a bit of an underwhelming start, but he really kind of shone through on Saturday. Scored the opening goal. He hit the bar in the lead up to Kevin Van Veen's winner, and that's a player that I liked to look at when he was at County. So that was one that we were quite pleased to get. And then Paul McGinn is a steady hand. My issue is that we brought in 3 guys in positions that we didn't really need to strengthen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're still short of a competent left back. But at the situation where Ricky Lamy is possibly our most competent centre half, which as much as I like Ricky, I think he is limited at times. So I would like to see someone a bit more composed and the experience beside him. You've already seen with Lamy in the opening game of the season, he nearly broke a St. player's leg. I don't think it was. No, it was definitely reckless. I don't think it was. There was no malice. There was no malice, but it was a red card every day of the week, and he got an extra game ban because of the nature of the tackle. So that's another area. And then without Kevin Van Veen, who's been playing injured for the first 5 or 6 weeks of the season, so I would like to see someone that could kind of back him up. It's just all about whether people become available. There's names being floated about just now, and some of them seem quite realistic. Some of them seem pie in the sky. But yeah, we'll just need to wait and see. Mother will tend to be either a 5 or 6 o'clock announcement on Twitter, bang on. So in 4 minutes' time, I'll be refreshing my Twitter feed and hoping that something happens.
Well, as you say, the start of a new season, new manager as well. Has there been any clear changes in the approach since Hamill's gone in, even on a temporary basis, that Livi can expect in terms of maybe the shape, style of play? And who are the players that we need to watch out for on Saturday?
I wouldn't say there's been drastic changes. The style, I do think in Saturday we got the ball down a lot more, and it was nice to see guys like Blair Spittle threatening down the flanks. And again, Paul McGinn has done very well to the extent where I would say he's now our first choice right back. Stevie O'Donnell has been playing is filled in at left back because Jake Carroll's ruled out for the rest of the season. He got a strange injury in training. The obvious would be Kevin Van Veen, who on his day is unplayable. When he's not on it, then he'd be as well not being there. But you never know what you're going to get there. But he certainly offers a real goal threat. Sean Goss has had a fantastic start to the season, which has been a very, very pleasant surprise. The way he moves the ball, his composure, and that's kind of been coupled by Callum Slattery, who I really liked last season, but I thought that there was limitations to his game. He seems to have worked in certain attributes over the summer. So yeah, I think we're quite robust in the middle of the park, but we can play some football as well, which a bit like Livingston, we don't often get the credit we deserve in terms of we've got some footballers in there that are very, very accomplished, but it doesn't suit the narrative of being hammer throwers and such like.
Hammer Throwers FC, we've been labelled with that. We were getting labelled with it even at the weekend when we passed Hibs off the park first half. But are there any ways that Livy can get some joy against Motherwell? I know you probably won't want to give away too much in case Davy Martindale's listening, but are there any ways that we can exploit Motherwell?
No, none at all. I think the obvious one, I don't know if you've seen the highlights from the weekend, but Bevis McGabby again caught out of position, and it's not the first time in the first part of the season his slag back pass cost us a goal against Sligo. He was culpable again for Volsky's header, which, to be fair, is an absolutely sensational header, it must be said. But McGabby's sleeping. And we just need kind of... He's got a good performance in him, and he's decent. He's a guy that will divide the support. When he was playing right back, he's got a bit of pace and he's got so much power that it kind of disguises his quite obvious flaws. But when he's been so heavily relied on at centre back, he's playing beside Solomon Johansson just now. I don't think he's bomb proof, put it that way. I think Livingston could get a bit of joy there. But saying that, looking at your first goal the other day, our defenders look competent compared to Hibs's.
That's not difficult. We recorded our first half of the podcast today, Andy, and I think terms were used pathetic, horrific to describe handling and Porteous as a combination. So yeah, but Big Joe
attempt at a tackle is just at least Ricky Lamy tries to make the tackle. Ball handling kind of just sat on the ground.
Yeah, it was. I mind watching it at the time, going, that didn't look very good, and then watching the replay, I was giving them more credit actually than we're probably due for that. But that could be a bit of a battle between Mugabe and Nubley, certainly, because Nubley's kicked off the season in fine form, so that should be a tasty one.
I think he's just let us down at some big moments. At the same time, he is a real cult hero, and I don't want to come on here and badmouth him in any way, because he would absolutely kick the shit out of me as well. But he has got positive attributes, but he's just got a moment in him that can be so costly. Thinking even back to Hibs in the Scottish Cup last year, where I thought we had a great chance of winning and going through to the semi-final. He's sent off within the first 60 seconds, and you're... Bevis, that's not the start we wanted to go off to here, but it's... I hadn't sat in my seat before Bevis had already sat in the changing room. But yeah, so I think that it'll be certainly a physical battle, that, and he's capable of that. He's capable of matching up, no problem at all. But it's more if you give him a wee bit of time in the ball. I think opposition teams know he's a weak spot at times, and they'll be looking to take advantage.
I certainly hope Big Joe can take advantage in that case. But Andy, if I had to push you for a prediction for the game, what are you going for?
Well, I've just been doing a bit for the programme on Livingston, funnily enough, and see that Livingston haven't won in almost 20 years now at Fir Park. An absolutely shocking record. So if there was ever a team that I should be confident about coming to Fir Park and with turnover, it should be Livingston, but I think it'll be very, very tough. I've been impressed by Livy and what I've seen. I saw the full Rangers game, and then I've seen the highlights of the next two games. I certainly didn't expect the result at Tannadice. Maybe if you'd asked me like after the week that Dundee United have had, but you kind of started the ball rolling in that
We always kick off teams starting to crumble. It always starts with us. Hibs in particular. We've now defeated 4 managers at Hibs in 8 months. So I'm fully expecting a new one in the dugout when we next play them later this year.
It's going to be tough. I'm going to say a narrow 2-1 victory. Although that's me kind of letting my heart roll my head. I think it's more likely to be a score draw.
I'm pretty sure Motherwell would probably take 7 points to kick off the season as well. Would be a decent start. But Andy, you do the MFC podcast. For those of our listeners who maybe haven't tuned in before, where can they find you?
Yeah, MFC Podcast 86 on Twitter, and you can find us in all the podcast apps and such like.
Guys, I encourage you to go and listen to the guys. Some of the content they produce is superb. But Andy, thank you very much for joining me again on the podcast. Wish you the best of luck with the programme and the podcast for the remainder of the season. Obviously, Saturday, I hope you have a miserable afternoon.
Top man. Cheers, Ian.
That's it for this week's episode of Talk Livi. Thanks again to every single one of you for tuning in week and week out. If you can, we'd love to hear your feedback. Either leave us a review on iTunes or simply message us on Twitter, Facebook or Instagram.
As Angus said, we're on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Search Talk Livi to find us and you'll find all the links to our weekly episodes on there as well. You can also find all our episodes, including this one, on all good podcast streaming sites, including iTunes and Spotify. We're also on YouTube, so don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And if none of those options suit you, all you have to do is head to our website, talklivipodcast.libsyn.com, where you'll find every single episode we've done over the last few years.
That's it for this week. Thanks again to all our listeners for tuning in. Let's hope for another great week following Lothian's finest football team. More fitting this week, isn't it, Euan?
Oh, it's definitely more fitting this week. It's been a fantastic week. So come on, Livy.
Livingston, oh Livingston, into that